Good evening YouTube, what's cracking off? Asmid here, and today I'm going to bring you the first in my series of videos on faction rankings for Total War Warhammer 2. Now before we start, I just want to give you a heads up regarding the scoring system and the ranking system I'm going to use. So out of the 6 factions that we're going to be rating or ranking today, each of them are going to be placed in one of 5 tiers. From top to bottom, they go overpowered, uber, average or balanced, let's just say, poor, and finally just dog shit really. I don't expect many lords to fall into that category. But anyway, let's get started then. So I'm going to be using 4 categories to rank each faction. And those 4 categories include the faction mechanics, so the buffs or the debuffs that faction produces, the leader's martial prowess in battle, the leader's commanding power for its army, and the leader's faction buffs. Coming in 6th place is Teclis and the Order of Loremasters. Now, starting with the faction attributes then. So Teclis starts off in Lustria, and Lustria, if you guys aren't aware, is a bit of a helper in the game. It can be a bit of a difficult starting position, Teclis can. However, there are some unique mechanics that his faction has that can help counteract that. So first of all, in terms of the climates, so usually Dark Elves wouldn't have the suitable climate in jungle, so it helps to have that in place for Teclis so that if he does expand here, he doesn't get many penalties. Onto his actual faction buffs then. So he's got +10 relationships with men, high elves, wood elves, lizard men and dwarfs. Now most of them are quite irrelevant apart from the high elves because that will help confederations, and the lizard men. So getting the lizard men on side early is quite important, because if you have them on side you can pretty much go through your Lustria campaign without too much trouble. So that's definitely a plus. As you'll find out later on in this video, Teclis is a very mage orientated campaign, so the ability to reduce the construction costs of his mage buildings for all regions is pretty decent, in addition to the recruit rank for the Loremasters and the mages. Phoenixes and Sword Masters of Hoth are also expensive units, so having a -25% recruitment cost is pretty handy, more so for the Phoenixes than the Sword Masters. So based on all that, there isn't a massive amount that Teclis provides as a faction. He hasn't got any unique mechanics like some of the other factions we'll look at later on. But what he does have is a bit of a robust mechanic to help him go about his Lustrian campaign. So for that reason, I'm going to be giving him a 3 out of 5 for faction attributes. Moving on to his martial prowess, Teclis' trait, Preeminent Mage, gives him 4 bound spells for Fireball, which are decent spells that you can use 4 times to battle. He's also got some extremely good items. I think Teclis has got one of the greatest set of items in the whole game. So starting off with the Scroll of Hoeth, he gives himself 15% magic resistance and a 20% cooldown to all spells. The Moon Staff gives him a miscast chance of -20% and allows him to cast Regrowth a lot cheaper. The War Crown gives him 10% ward save and a 30% cooldown to all spells. And the Sword of Teclis gives him 40 armor piercing weapon damage, melee defense +10, missile resistance 20%, and makes all of his physical melee attacks magical attacks. Chain Lightning reduced costs by -3 as well, which is helpful. Apart from that, he's got a Greater Ward, which gives him 10% ward save in addition to his item that already gives him another 10. You can have the Potion of Koroi, which means he can heal himself for free 4 times and give himself 40% damage resistance each time he's being healed. And not only that, he's also got an Arcane Phoenix mount, which means as a mage he's in the perfect position. He's in the air with a fast mount, he can dart about casting magic, and if he really wants to engage he can do, because the Arcane Phoenix is robust enough. Moving on to his spells really quickly then, he's got a fantastic set of spells. Flock of Doom is a very good early game spell for dishing out some damage. Net of Amantok, good support spell. Chain Lightning, good vortex spell. Regrowth, good support spell. And then he gets 2 bound fiery convocations, which is an amazing spell that does a lot of damage. Based on all this, I am giving Teclis a 5 out of 5 ranking for martial prowess. Moving on to commandability then, Teclis has his trait gives him. So go on. Before we start then, for commandability, this is all about how Teclis impacts his army in terms of battle and what kind of buffs he offers them. The truth being told, Teclis doesn't do much for his army. He does boost some things, however. So in Preeminent Mage, he gives him plus 30 Winds of Magic Power Reserve, which is pretty good. He also gets extra Winds of Magic Power Reserves from the Moonstaff, plus 18. The War Crown, plus 18. Sublime Focus, plus 5. Potential Energy, plus 15. Magical Reserves, plus 15. So it's quite a lot, and he's got greater Arcane Conduit, and he's got the Sword of Teclis as well, which I almost forgot, sorry. So this does provide him a minus 5% upkeep for all units, which is, again, okay, but all he's really providing there is just magical reserves, and for me, that's not the best thing. It does boost his army, it does help with his mages, so they complement each other well, but it's not enough to give him a high ranking, so he's only getting a 2 out of 5 for commandability. So finally, in terms of faction buffs, there's not that much that Teclis provides, but what it does provide is pretty decent. War Crown of Safri, it gives him the ability to recruit mages from any province and gives him +1 capacity and +2 recruit rank for all mages. Now the fact that his whole faction is centered around magic, this is a welcome boost. He's also got Master of the Order, which gives him action success chance plus 5%, which is not a lot, but the action reduction cost minus 15% is pretty good, in addition to the ward save, which is excellent, because you're going to be building up all these mages and you sure as hell don't want them to be hurt or die or anything like that. So the fact that he gives him 10% ward save is excellent, which is why I'm giving Teclis a 3 out of 5 ranking for faction buffs. He doesn't provide a lot, but what he does provide is decent. In summary, Teclis and the Order of Loremasters are very mage and Loremaster of Hoeth orientated army, with a massive boost on magic. As you can see here, he's a terrific spellcaster with a bound fiery convocation, able to tear up at least half of this Bleak Sword Dark Elf line, and he's more than capable of standing up for himself against single entity monsters such as Manticore, whilst casting spells halfway across the battlefield like Chain Lightning. However, as good as he is in combat, his simple but not great mechanics of his faction only give him a 3.25 out of 5 ranking overall, giving him a tier of balanced. Coming in at 5th place is Imric of the Knights of CALEDOR. Now Imric and the Knights of CALEDOR are unique in a way that, in terms of their faction attributes, they actually have some good stuff going for them. However, where they're located is what hurts them the most. So they're located right on the east side of the map, completely on the other side to where the rest of the High Elves are in Orthwan here. Apart from the fact that they're so far away from the other High Elves, they also have some nasty buggers next to them. So you have Malice Darkblade here, who will wipe out this Lizardmen faction extremely quickly, and as soon as he's done that, he's going to be itching to attack you. On the other side, you won't be able to see him from where we are, but right here in Flayed Rock is where Deathmaster Snitch is sitting, and he is absolutely deadly to the high elves in the early game, especially on the harder difficulties, because they can just keep on spamming armies and they can ambush you and destroy you very quickly. So those are the things that penalise Imric and his faction. However, there are some things that he's got going for him that kind of balances it out. He has got some extra suitable climates, but they're kind of irrelevant. What he's got is the ability to be able to recruit through battle some of the most powerful single entity monsters in the game. These dragons that Imric can fight and recruit are absolutely deadly, and because of that, that earns him some points for faction attributes. He's also got -1 duration for dragons and Dragon Prince units. That's very helpful. With some other buffs, you may even be able to get that down to 1, so you can recruit dragons very quickly. All those things considered, I'm giving Imric a 2 out of 5 ranking for faction attributes. Moving on to martial prowess now, and Imric is a good melee fighter. He comes equipped on a mount called Morterius, I believe. I'm not sure if I said that right, but go on. It's a good mount to start off with. It gives him a bit of speed, allows him to charge about into fights. He also comes equipped with the Star Lance, which boosts his speed, gives him a charge bonus, and gives him an ornament which imbues fire damage. Again, pretty good. Moving on to his equipment now. He's only got an extra one, which is the armour of CALEDOR. That is very good. This armour is probably one of the most powerful in the game, in my opinion, in terms of armour. It gives him that war save of 10%, gives him armour, gives him vigour loss reduction. But apart from that, it gives him this ability to heal up to 3000 HP per battle, which is absolutely ridiculous. He's also got a really powerful mount in the form of Menaithnir. Now I believe that is the most powerful star dragon in the game. Don't quote me on that, but it is very powerful to say the least. Moving on to the other skills now that help him be a great melee fighter. We've got Dragonheart, that gives him a +7 melee attack. We've got Ashen Fields, that gives him +10% weapon strength. It also gives a map-wide weakness to all enemies of +20% weakness to fire damage. So all of his dragons, all of his fire-imbued fighters will be doing extra 20% damage when Ashen Fields is unlocked. So that helps in a commandability point of view as well. He's also got Blazing Lance, which again attacks cause flammable effect, reducing the fire resistance and increasing his charge bonus. And he's just got Dragon Pact, which is 4 free piercing bolts of burning, basically, that you can cast with a timer of 120 seconds. Now that's a very powerful bombardment. With Imric fully powered up, it's possible you can get hundreds and hundreds of kills in a single battle, which is why I'm going to be giving Imric a 5 out of 5 ranking for martial prowess. So as you would have probably guessed by now, Imric is basically the Dragon Lord of the High Elves. So all of his, most of his commanding boosts mostly complement his dragons. Starting with Vorl's armament then, he gives his army 15% magic resistance and +15 armour. Dragonheart, he gives all of his units in his army 35% fire resistance and +5 leadership. Astride the battlefield, it boosts some cavalry by 15% speed and charge bonus. Ashen Fields, like I mentioned, makes the entire enemies on the map weak to fire, so his fire imbued units can do extra damage. Apart from that, if we look at his traits, he gets a +15 campaign movement range, which is paramount because it means you can get into battles quicker. You can escape from battles you can't win easier as well. So the campaign movement range is really important. The fact that he's got to fight in a lot of mountainous terrain and some desert terrain, and he's got resilience to the attrition of it, is very good. And the fact that he reduces the upkeep for the very thing he completely boosts by 25% again is very good. So Imric, in that regard, is getting a 5 out of 5 ranking for commandability. Moving on to his faction buffs now, and there isn't that much that Imric does. One thing he does do very nice is CALEDOR Incumbent. Now this skill here, unlocked at rank 12, gives you 2+ influence per turn, which is really important as the Knights of CALEDOR, because you want to be improving relationships with the High Elves, you want to be getting those confederations, so increasing that influence is really good. He also allows nobles to be recruited from all provinces and boost the capacity by 3. Now, seeing as nobles are one of the main tools the High Elves use to boost their influence, getting them is even going to boost their influence of the Knights of CALEDOR a lot higher, making them a really top faction for accumulating lots of influence and potentially down the line confederating lords. So I feel that CALEDOR Incumbent is a very good skill to have. A lot of the times when I try and make sure that I confederate Imric as another High Elf Legendary Lord, because I want this skill. It's a very good skill. As we've discussed, he's also got Vor's Armament, which boosts research rate by 10%. That's okay, not too bad. And Astride the Battlefield gives recruit rank +2 for cavalry units, which is again okay. Cavalry isn't really the meta for Warhammer 2, but it's okay. Based on that, I'm going to be giving Imric and the Knights of CALEDOR a 3 out of 5 ranking for faction buffs. In summary, Imric's faction and the Knights of CALEDOR start off in a very precarious and daunting starting position. However, they kind of counteract this towards the mid-game through the employment and recruitment of some of the most powerful single entity monsters in the game. These 5 dragons, in addition to Imric's own personal mount, are some of the most powerful monsters in the game, and would be able to destroy most armies with ease. As you can see, the fire attacks pretty much decimated half their army even before melees begun, and yet they've still got more breath attacks to use. Based on this, Imric is a superb Dragon Lord, but he does not have any other real boosts, which is why he's going to get a 3.75 out of 5 ranking overall, putting him into the balanced tier. He is good, but he's just dragging good. Coming in at 4th place is Eltharion and his faction, YVRESSE.
Prince Eltharion.
Now, a lot of you might be surprised to see Eltharion this low. He is a DLC lord and he's got absolutely outstanding abilities in terms of his faction power. However, go on, we'll go through the justification in a bit, but this is just a testament to how great all of the other legendary lords and factions are for the High Elves. Eltharion, this faction himself, is absolutely top tier, and we'll see that from his ranking at the end. We're getting started in his faction attributes now. So as you probably noticed, Eltharion has got a dual starting position, one in the old world in the Badlands here in Grontu Mingol, and he also starts off with Tor YVRESSE with another army here. Now this might be a bit daunting for newer players, because you've got double the things you got to look out for and everything, but in actual fact, if you're really that bothered, you can always abandon your settlement in Grontu Mingol, abandon your army with Eltharion, and be able to just set up shop in Ulthuan. Or if you want to do it the other way around, you can just abandon your Ulthuan settlement and just crack on in the Badlands. Personally, I think the dual start location isn't that difficult. I think it can be handled pretty easily. If you do find it difficult, you could always just park the bus in one region, just defend it fully while you expand in the other. But personally, I do think that it's a manageable situation, even if he does start right next to the greenskins, which he has a lot of issues with. Moving on to his actual mechanics then. So the Realm of Mist gives him access to the Dungeon of Athel Tamara. Now this mechanic here is one of the most powerful in the whole game. So in this dungeon, there are a lot of things you can do with it, but One of the main things is that you are able to siphon off a ridiculous amount of money from other factions by indoctrinating their lords. Now there are exploits in place and other videos that are out there that shows you step-by-step guides on how to do this. I won't be covering it in this video, but the potential is certainly there to basically make this mechanic just siphon off loads and loads of money off whichever faction you want. Apart from that, this mechanic also gives the ability for YVRESSE and Eltharion's faction to recruit some of the most unique units for the High Elves that are absolutely brilliant. Some of them are average, like the melee infantry they provide, but the hybrid Mistwalker infantry, the Sentinels of Astari, the monstrous cavalry in the Knights of Torgavall, those units are incredibly powerful and could be doom stacks for the High Elves, which is why I think that this mechanic here is just so powerful. It provides so much, a lot of money, a lot of good units. Eltharion's also got access to the Mists of YVRESSE, which is an okay like environmental factor. It's not available right now, I don't think. Yeah, it's not. But once you do build up your Ladriel's blessings by using the Dungeons of Athel tomorrow, you can invoke the Mists of YVRESSE into your province and into all the outside regions of Ulthuan, which basically they give you ambush success chances, they increase your movement range, and they also have little abilities in battle that help you stay unspottable when you're fighting your foes. So go on, in terms of overall, the Mists of YVRESSE are a decent attribute. However, they're just completely overshadowed by how powerful the Prison of Athel tomorrow is. Finally then, there's the diplomatic penalty with greenskins. It's not very helpful, seeing as you do start in the Badlands, but it's not the worst because there are ways that Eltharion can deal with it, as we'll go into later. And he's also got a +3 recruit rank for spear, infantry and ranger units. So based on that assessment right there for faction attributes, I'm having to give Eltharion a 5 out of 5 ranking for faction attributes, just because of how powerful his faction mechanics are. Moving on to martial prowess then, and Eltharion's got some decent items that he can equip that will help him in battle. Starting off with the Talisman of Hoeth, it gives him a reduction of miscast chance by 20%, reduces the costs for casting Hand of Glory for him. Helm of YVRESSE, it gives him +25 armour. Fangsword of Eltharion boosts his speed and his bonus versus infantry. He has also got the option of a mount which is Stormwing, the Griffin, which is a very powerful and good looking mount. I'd highly recommend getting Eltharion on that. He's also got Storm of Blades, which gives himself +55 armor piercing damage and +15 speed. And apart from that, he's got decent support spells like Apotheosis, Hand of Glory. He's got decent damage spells like Soul Quench and Tempest. And Fiery Convocation here is a very, very powerful yet expensive spell that can do an insane amount of damage. So based on those, we have to give Eltharion a 5 out of 5 ranking for martial prowess. Now moving on to commandability then. So there is a lot that Eltharion does to boost his army in battle, starting off with his trait. So as we mentioned earlier, there's a massive diplomatic penalty for Eltharion when dealing with greenskins, but Warden of Tor YVRESSE mitigates some of those issues. So immune to barren wasteland attrition, very helpful, because if you can stay in the Badlands, you're going to be susceptible to that attrition. He gives his spear infantry and rangers +8 leadership and melee defense for all of his army, and it allows all of his army to cause fear when fighting greenskins. So it allows them to rout quicker, which allows you to win the battle quicker, and therefore just beat off the greenskins. His items then also provide a boost to his commandability. He gets a PAL reserve for Winds of Magic +20 that will help other mages or Loremasters of Hoeth cast spells in his army. The Helm of YVRESSE also gives +5 leadership for his army and a decent augment. Breaker upon walls give all of his shielded units in his army +10 armor, and it will also provide unending volley, which is an augment that replenishes ammo for 5 seconds for all of his missile units. There is a cooldown of 25 seconds though, so it's not unlimited ammo, but it certainly helps them from running out quickly. We've also got War Warden, which gives armor for all of his units when defending +15. A World Asunder, which reduces enemy leadership by -8. Unyielding March, which gives campaign movement range +10% and reduces the cost of recruiting anything into his army by 25%. And then to top it all off, like he did anything else, he's also got Dedicated to Ladriel. Now this will increase his vigor loss reduction by to 20% for Mistwalkers, and it will also increase their weapon and missile strength by 10%. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the units that Eltharion provides in the form of the Sentinels of Starry or Knights of Tall Gval are very, very powerful units, and the ability to increase their weapon strength and missile strength by up to 10% or 20% if you get the second one, then it's a massive boost. So based on that, we're going to have to give Eltharion a 5 out of 5 ranking for commandability. Now you're probably sitting there thinking, this guy's got 5 out of 5 in everything, how is he not the best lord? Well, this is just a testament to how good Eltharion and most of the high elf factions / lords are. But where Eltharion does let himself down slightly is the personal faction buffs he solely provides to his faction. Now there's only 2 things that he does and 1 thing that counteracts it. So first off, starting with War Warden, it reduced the cost for walls and garrison buildings. I mean, as Eltharion, you don't really need a massive reduction to construction costs because your factions are already so rich anyway. The construction tile -2 is okay. It could be helpful in certain situations, but not many. World Asunder gives him -1 public order in a local province, which is again counteracts War Warden. And then Unyielding March, this is his saving grace really. It gives himself +2 recruitment capacity for globally, which is really helpful, but that's it. That's all he provides from a faction buff perspective. So based on that, I can only really justify giving Eltharion a 2 out of 5 ranking for faction buffs. In summary, Eltharion and his faction YVRESSE have excellent faction mechanics that really do boost the potential of YVRESSE as a faction. Through their mechanics, they have excellent unique units like the Knights of Tall Gval, which we're seeing here, which are excellent flying monstrous cavalry. They also have okay / mediocre infantry and excellent hybrid infantry / missile infantry in the form of the Sentinels of the Starry. As for Eltharion himself, he's an excellent spellcaster and a very good melee fighter on top of his mount Stormwing. However, the only issues with YVRESSE and Eltharion is that Eltharion himself doesn't boost much of the actual faction mechanics himself. It's mostly the mechanics he gets from YVRESSE, which is why overall Eltharion and YVRESSE will be getting a 4.25 out of 5 ranking overall, putting them into the Uber tier. Coming in at 3rd place is Tyrion of EATAINE. Now Tyrion is one of those lords that, in my opinion, has got the most easiest starting position out of any other faction in the whole game. The fact that you start with right in the middle of Ulthuan, able to go either way and confederate your way through. You have some pesky little weak Dark Elves right next to you that you can pretty much wipe out within 5 or 6 turns. Tyrion by far has the easiest starting location out of any faction. In addition to that, the mechanics give him +20 relationships with High Elves, and recruitment duration is -1 for all infantry and cavalry units. Now, the Shrine of Cain reduction, the -50 construction time for Shrine of Cain is very minor. It's irrelevant really. The recruitment duration definitely helps because Tyrion himself has got some further boosts that reduce the duration even further. But it's the +20 diplomatic relations with the High Elves that really helps, because that allows Tyrion, coupled with some of the skills that he gets later on, to start rolling up Ulthuan from one side to the other. You can pretty much go through every faction. That +20 relationship boost as well, you can start confederating them very easily. So I think Tyrion has got a very easy start position. He's not got the most diverse range of faction mechanics, but what he does have is the ability to confederate all the Dark Elves really quickly. By turn 30-40, you should be easily able to confederate all of Ulthuan. Maybe not all of the Dark Elf factions, but at least all of Ulthuan. So based on that, I'm going to have to give Tyrion a ranking of 4 out of 5 for faction attributes. He doesn't offer as much as Eltharion in terms of his faction, but what he does offer are pretty decent, and he's got a very exceptional starting location. Moving on to his martial prowess then. Now, Tyrion is one of those lords that you wouldn't even need to invest in any of his martial prowess skills because his base stats are just so outstanding. 125 armor, I mean, who else starts with that? 75 melee attack, ridiculous. Melee defense 60, ridiculous. Weapon strength 470, and 2/3 of that is armor piercing. So Tyrion is a very, very powerful duelist. He's not any sort of spellcaster. He's not going to cause havoc from afar, but you stick him in there, you get him next to another enemy lord, and he will tear them apart. In addition to that, he's also got really great items going for him. So he's got the Heart of AVELORN, which increases his aura and his leadership effects from his aura, increases melee defense, his magic resistance, and the Heart of AVELORN regeneration is absolutely incredible. So basically, when you think Tyrion's almost down and out, bang, he restores up to about almost half of his HP just through that one item. He's also got the Dragon Armour of Venarian, which gives him armour, some resistances in the form of fire, physical and ward save. He's also got Sunfang, which gives him +30 armour piercing strength, gives him weapon strength +10%. It gives him the breath ability Sunfang, which is okay, to be honest. It's not the biggest area of effect, but it's, for the damage it does, it's pretty okay. But another thing it does massively that's helpful is it turns his physical melee attacks into magical and flaming attacks, which are very powerful, especially if you're going up against someone who regenerates quite a lot, or vampire counts, ghost, or undead, or anything like that. In my opinion, Tyrion, with all his items in and his base stats, is one in the top 2 duelist. Now I think maybe someone like Durthu or maybe Colex Suneater may have the opportunity, maybe, to take out Tyrion, but in actual fact they are a lot bigger entity size, and bigger doesn't necessarily mean better in Warhammer 2. So based on that, I do think Tyrion's top tier duelist material. He's also got access to the bloodline of Venarian if he wanted to turn into an absolute beast. I'd highly recommend not doing this skill tree, however, because it locks Majesty of Ulthuan, which I believe is far more important. But if you did want to just turn Tyrion into a one-man machine, then he'd be able to get him more weapon strength, more melee attack, even more weapon strength, more charge bonus, and more resistances in HP. So based on that and all we've just considered, I do not have any other option but to put Tyrion a 5 out of 5 for martial prowess. Now, in terms of commandability then, there's not that much that Tyrion offers, but what he does offer is decent. He's got Great Warrior, which reduces the upkeep costs for spears, silver and guard, rangers, archers and silver helms by 50%. Now, rangers, spears and archers are very good early game units that you want to be utilising, so reduced upkeep for them by 50% is very good. He's also got +3 recruit rank for Loth and Seaguard, which again is pretty decent because you do want to start phasing out your archers for Loth and Seaguard if you can. He's also got Majesty of Ulthuan, which is a constant ability where the enemies, his allies around him will be buffed by +4 leadership and +5 melee defense. And he's also got some dedications down here that makes him a bit of a jack of all trades, really. If you want to go down for a dragon army, then you go dedicated to Adioth. If you want dragon princes, you go dedicated to Vor. If you want off the Sea Guard, you go dedicated to Mathlan. So there are a lot of options here, depending on how you want to build Tyrion's army. But they're not massive boosts. They're only like 5% or +5s or +2 untainted. So they're not huge boosts, but it can help overall boost Tyrion's army. So based on that, I'm going to have to give Tyrion a ranking of 3 out of 5 for commandability. Finally, we come to the faction buffs, and this is where, in my opinion, Tyrion is an absolute monster. He buffs the crap out of his faction, so much more on Eltharion, and potentially so much more than any other High Elf legendary lord. So let's get started then. So Sunfang gives him +3 public order all provinces. Yeah, that's decent, I'll take that. Unifier gives him another +1 all provinces, again decent. Also gives him income for more buildings in the province, +13%. That's very good. But what it does also give you is +20 relationships with the High Elves. Now you've already got your +20 from your faction bonus. You get that, and all you have to do is invest in maybe 1 or 2 influence, or maybe 3 or 4, and you'll be able to start confederating High Elves left, right and centre. It's a very, very good trait to get that will help you start rolling up Ulthuan all under Tyrion's control. You got Sense of Urgency, which reduces the recruitment cost by 10% for all armies, faction-wide. You also increase the recruitment capacity by 2, and reduces the duration it takes to recruit any units into 1, which is really important if you've got an army coming up to you and you want to raise an army really quickly to be able to fend them off. Then this allows you to use the recruitment pool globally to get lots of them and get them quickly. Righteous Cause then, the final thing that Tyrion provides is upkeep -10% across all armies, and then gives himself +10 untainted in the local province as well. That is a very, very good trait. The fact that you can reduce 10% all armies is honestly just ridiculous. I don't know any other lord that does that. So if you are strapped for cash, you boost that out, and you've suddenly got yourself a lot of free cash lying about that you can spend to either create other armies or invest in your buildings, or even you can save up. But either way, Righteous Cause is a very, very strong skill. Just on the side note, you can also, some of these dedications have also got global bonuses like faction bonuses like public order. You got untainted there. Yeah, so it's not amazing, these dedications, but here you've got income from all ports +1%. But yeah, either way, based on these 3 skills mainly, Unifier, Sense of Urgency and Righteous Cause, I'm going to be giving Tyrion a 5 out of 5 ranking for faction buffs. In summary, Tyrion and EATAINE has one of the best starting positions out of every other faction in the whole of Warhammer 2. As you can see, Tyrion is a very proficient melee fighter. In actual fact, I'll place him top 3 alongside Durthu and Kolek. Maybe there are a few people, Malice is a contender, but go on. Regardless, apart from the fact that he's an absolute beast of a melee fighter, and he's got a good starting position, he can start confederating all of the High Elves in Ulthuan with relative ease, due to the diplomatic boosts and bonuses that he's got. And on top of that, he provides really overpowered faction buffs to public order, recruitment duration, etc. Which is why I'm going to rank Tyrion a 4.25 out of 5, placing him in the Uber tier. So Tyrion and Eltharion are drawing the 3rd spot, both with 4.25 out of 5 in the Uber tier. Okay, so coming in at 2nd place is Elithanar and his faction NAGARYTHE, or NAGARYTHE, however you pronounce that. Now, Elithanar, let's start off with his faction attributes then. So one thing that's hidden in the actual faction menu, the faction effects section here, is his stalk and, well, his different stances basically. So the stalk stance, in my opinion, this is one of the most overpowered stances in the whole game. Every time I play Skaven and then move on to another faction, I just think back to how powerful and great the stalk stance is. It pretty much allows you to make every single battle an ambush battle where you'd win it. Now, this might seem a bit pointless to some of you, but I find ambush battles are actually a lot more entertaining because it can be a bit more strategic sometimes. So the fact that Elithanar gets that ability is absolutely great. It's not just Elithanar, by the way, who gets that. It is every lord in the faction. So if I were to recruit another lord from Arnheim,
behold, elven beauty.
They will also be have the stalk stance. In addition to the stalk stance, Elithanar also has the Shadow Realm pathways. Now this works very similar, well, exactly the same as the World Routes or the Beast Paths or the Underground that Skaven and the Dwarves have. It's just good to be able to pass unpassable terrain or areas with high attrition, because obviously you allow the immunity to attrition. So very good stances already for Nagarythe. Going on to the actual faction effects now. So we'll come back to the climate suitability, but in terms of the invocation of Moray Heg, so the ability to summon the hand of the Shadow Crown hero, you might think, oh, that's just wow, it's just a hero. But in actual fact, it can be an extremely valuable unit. Not so much in battle, although it can be good in battle because it's got a lot of missile strength, good for sniping lords, but more so on the campaign map. So on the campaign map, the Hand of the Shadow Crown hero has got the ability, once you summon him from here, using this invocation, he's got the ability to assassinate any single lord or hero in the game. Now if they're legendary lord or if they're immortal, then obviously they can only wound them for a certain number of turns, but if they don't have immortality or aren't legendary, they'll be gone for good. Now you might think, oh wow, why is that so amazing? I can just get my army to do that. Well, it's because of the unique mechanic that Elithanar's faction have got, the marks for death. Now every 20 turns, 3 candidates will be chosen at random, and every time you kill one of them or assassinate that particular candidate, you get a bonus to gold, you get bonus to influence, and you get ability, something like this, or it usually changes depending on who it is. However, what always stays constant is the diplomatic relations plus 20 with the High Elves for 20 turns. So if you would be able to do 2 or 3 of these in the first, I don't know, 20, 40 turns, then you're guaranteeing that you're going to have a good relationship with the High Elves, that you'll be able to confederate them really quickly and take over Ulthuan really quickly. So that is a really good mechanic that meshes really well with the unique hero for Elithanar. Now, before we move on from the faction attributes, I just want to quickly touch on the suitable climates. Now it says here that Wasteland is suitable, which you might think, oh, that's good news. But what it doesn't tell you is that Temperate Island here is actually in the unpleasant category. So every single city or settlement in Ulthuan will have the unpleasant climate. Now this might seem like terrible news, but don't get too hung up about it. Unpleasant really isn't that bad. Construction cost and income from buildings shouldn't be too much of an issue because you're the High Elves, you already create a lot of money. Public order, you should be able to, well, there are other buffs that Elithanar provides that counteract public order. So all in all, I wouldn't worry about the suitability of the climate too much. So moving on then to his martial prowess. Now Elithanar is a very good ranged fighter. He's a great archer with a ridiculous amount of range, artillery level range, and very good missile strength, most of which is armor piercing. Apart from his base stats, he comes equipped with a Stone of Midnight that gives him ward save 17% and gives him 20% missile resistance for himself and his allies constantly, which again is just amazing. His other items include the Shadow Crown, which gives him a decent augment ability, the Moonbow, which gives him extra range, extra ammunition, more missile strength, and makes his physical attacks magical attacks. It also gives him Moonbow magic missile. And then we have No Rest for the Wicked. Now this ability here gives the campaign movement range is regarding another category, but the Perfect Vigor allows him to always stay fresh every time he's running around in battle, which is really important for two types of armies. First of all, cavalry, because they'll be running around everywhere trying to cycle charge, and second of all, for archers or missile heavy armies that want to be kiting. In this instance, Elithanar and his Shadow Warriors should be kiting because they'll be able to shoot when they're moving, and that Perfect Vigor attribute for Elithanar means that he'll be able to keep shooting and keep running throughout the whole game without becoming tired one bit. Moving on to his skills then, his Spectre gives him plus 12 melee defense, and the Shadow King gives him a really cool ability in which he can basically create a decoy of himself that will distract the enemy, the AI enemy, for quite a while all your units shoot on him. This decoy can also fire itself and causes 50% of the damage of Elithanar, so it's a pretty good ability. Based on those considerations, that's why I am going to give Elithanar a ranking of 5 out of 5 for martial prowess. Right, moving on to commandability then. So in terms of commandability, Elithanar has got one of the fantastic trait in terms of Ravenlord. Shadow Warriors and Walkers are a very good high elf unit, but if you're playing another faction apart from Nagarythe, I wouldn't really recruit them just because there's better options out there. You've got the Sisters, you've got Archers, you've got Loth and Seaguard. But for Elithanar's Nagarythe, he focuses pretty much on buffing these two units, Shadow Warriors and Walkers. And one of the abilities he's got here is reducing their upkeep by 50%. They're great units. They can come on the expensive side, so the fact that he can reduce the upkeep by 50% is very good. And he increases his ambush success chance. So pretty much right off the bat, he loses 15% ambush success chance, but then he gains it from his trait, which means he's already got a plus 10 success chance every time that he initiates a fight. Unless the other army he's facing has got a 10% ambush defense chance, Elithanar is definitely going to ambush them without any extra skills. But that is not all. So if we go into the Shadow Crown then, it gives him another plus 10 ambush success chance. No Rest for the Wicked gives him plus 5 campaign movement range. Revenant makes reduce the enemy leadership in the local region by -4. Again, very good. Ruthless gives melee attack, speed and ammunition boosts to Shadow Warriors and Shadow Walkers, which is excellent. Sworn to Vengeance increases his weapon and missile strength when fighting Dark Elves, and also increases some monetary buffs in terms of sacking, looting and post-battle loot. Again, Spectre increases his success chance by an extra 15%. So overall, Elithanar buffs the crap out of his army, especially his Shadow Warriors and Walkers, which is why I'm going to have to give him a ranking of 5 out of 5 for commandability. Now move on to the faction buffs, and it's kind of the same story as with Eltharion. He does a lot for his army, he does a lot for himself in battle, he does a lot, his faction mechanics are pretty decent, but there's not that much Elithanar does that buffs his faction. There are a few things, however. So he's got the Shadow Crown, which gives him the plus 5 public order bonus in that province he's in, which is fairly decent. Shadow King, which gives him plus 4 public order in all provinces, and the main one here, Renegade. Now this one's a really key one. Plus 12% missile strength for all armies faction wide. Now it does come at a cost of -8 diplomatic relations with High Elves. However, I do think this is massively counterbalanced by the buffs you can get from when you're carrying out the Mark for Death missions, from the plus 20s that you can get from assassinating the different people. So I do think that Elithanar's counter trait there with the -8 is there, but it's not going to make too much of a difference, because you should be actively working to confederate everyone and improve relations with everyone anyway. And the fact that you can boost their missile strength faction-wide, all armies, by 12% is absolutely ridiculous. However, that is all that Elithanar offers, so based on that, I can only justify giving him a 3 out of 5 ranking for faction buffs. So overall, Elithanar and Nagarythe are a very powerful faction due to the combination of excellent mechanics, good range fighters, the ability to quickly confederate other high elves, and what really brings them down is his average faction buffs, which is why ultimately I'm going to be giving Elithanar and Nagarythe a ranking of 4.5 out of 5, putting him in the Uber tier at second place. Coming in at first place, it is none other than the Ever Queen herself, Alarielle the Radiant. Now, Alarielle is probably one of the most powerful legendary lords / factions in the whole game, and we'll go through those different categories. Now, let's just jump straight into it. So in terms of her faction attributes then, she's got some outstanding faction attributes. First of all, she's got the Defender of Ulthuan, which gives herself up to a maximum of +5 public order, +10% income from all buildings, +10 diplomatic relations with high elves, +5 growth, and +5 leadership for all armies and all provinces, faction wide, as long as Ulthuan is under high elf control. Now this is an absolutely overpowered boost. This can really benefit the early game, because you've got a lot of issues with public order, with income, with relations with high elves, and this can boost all of that, and it only gets better as you get through the campaign. So it's a very powerful mechanic. She's also got Carnival of the Ever Queen, so a reduction by -25% to intrigue when using core actions. She's also got +2 hero capacity for handmaidens, and 2 different rites that we'll have a look at now: the Invocation of Lilith and the Greater Invocation of Isha. Now, in terms of the rites then, I think the Greater Invocation of Isha is a bit meh. It's not so different from the standard Invocation of Isha. It just gives some passive abilities such as regeneration to Dryads, Treekin and Treeman, which is okay. Then she's got the Invocation of Lilith, which is again okay. It's good for mages, and if you got a lot of mages in your army, it can be useful. But I don't think those 2 rites are that powerful. However, it's the Defender of Ulthuan and the reduction in intrigue cost, plus the hero capacity for handmaidens, and that is going to earn Alarielle a 5 out of 5 ranking for faction attributes. Moving on to martial prowess then, she's got some, again, amazing items and amazing skills that she can really boost her martial prowess, starting with the Stave of AVELORN, which gives herself a reduction in miscast chance and improves her power recharge rate. She's also got the Shieldstone of Isha, which gives herself +10 melee defense, 5% ward save, and gives her and her allies within 40 meters 10% physical resistance constantly. She's also got the Star of AVELORN, which allows her to heal 2 times in a battle, where she can heal up to 3 people per time, up to 1080 hit points. Very powerful. Free spell. Obviously there is a cooldown of 120 seconds. Then she's also got the Ward of Isha, which gives herself 10% ward save. That's very unique to Alarielle, and it's very good. Isha's Blessing she also has, which reduces her miscast chance by 15%. She's got the Great Eagle Mount to make herself relatively proficient in melee, and there are some other melee options in the form of Touch of the Ever Queen, which improves her weapon strength, and Chaos Bane. But overall, based on the fact that she's a decent melee fighter, but also a very good spellcaster, because she can cast spells like Earthblood, Fast Protection, Life Bloom, and Shield of Sapphire and Exorcism are 3 passive abilities that happen every time she casts, which is excellent. And then she's also got a decent but quite expensive banishment as well, and Arcane Conduit obviously. So based on that, I'm giving Alarielle a 5 out of 5 ranking for martial prowess. Moving on to commandability then, she's got the Radiance ability, which gives her army 15% missile strength for Sisters of AVELORN and Handmaidens. Now this is a very good trait, because Sisters of AVELORN are basically the go-to doom stack for the high elves, and the fact that she can increase her missile strength for them by 15% is absolutely excellent. However, she's also got the Stave of AVELORN, which boosts her Winds of Magic reserve and her starting amount by 8 and 10 respectively. The Shield Stone of Isha gives her, like I said earlier, gives her allies with 40 meters physical resistance. She's also got Isha's Blessing, which gives her another plus 15 power reserve for Winds of Magic. She's also got Touch of the Everqueen and the Chaos Bane, if you ever want more melee attack when fighting races like Vampire Counts, Coast, Tomb Kings, Chaos, Nausicaa, Beastmen, etc. And she's also got Spiritual Defender as well. Now this complements her very well with her Radiance trait, because it gives Sisters of Avalorn extra melee defense as well for any armies in the local region. So again, that's very, very powerful. So altogether, I'm going to be giving Alarielle a commandability ranking of 5 out of 5. Now moving on then to faction buffs, she has one of the most powerful passive abilities in the game, in the form of Power of Nature. Now every time Alarielle visits a settlement or visits a region and ends a turn there, she will give that settlement in that region the Power of Nature. And that gives them +1 influence per turn, +3 public order, Winds of Magic power reserve +10, growth +10, and untainted +5. Now this is a very, very powerful passive ability. The fact that you can start building these up from turn 1 is really good. In addition to that, she's also got the ability Tradition Dictates.
Servant of Light.
So Tradition Dictates give public order +2 all provinces, tax rate +5% faction wide. Leader of the Court, she gives +15 diplomatic relations with High Elves, -10% construction cost for local province. Servant of Isha, she gets another +2 capacity of handmaidens, allows you to recruit them from any province, and every time you do recruit them, they're going to have a +2 recruit rank. And finally, Spiritual Defender, which gives herself untainted +6 in the local province and reduces the recruitment duration of Sisters of Avalorn units by 1. So potentially, by recruiting enough handmaidens and recruiting Tyrion, combined with this ability, you can potentially recruit Sisters of Avalorn units globally in 1 turn, which is absolutely OP. So in summary then, for faction buffs, I'm going to be giving Alarielle a ranking of 5 out of 5. In summary then, Alarielle and her faction, Avalorn, is a very powerful and overpowered faction, as you'll see by the overall ranking in a minute. She has a very good starting position in the form of right in the centre of Ulthuan. It's not as good as Tyrion's, however it has got some of its advantages due to it being more central. Still not as good as Tyrion's, but it's still very good. She has excellent faction-wide buffs in the form of the Power of Nature, which is a passive ability, and Defender of Ulthuan, which she can accumulate and get and improve as she goes on in the campaign. She boosts very powerful units in the form of Sisters of Avalorn. Now these units are very, very powerful, and the fact that she boosts their melee defense and their missile strength even further is just a testament to how good a faction/lord she really is. And finally, she's a very good healer as a spellcaster and a decent melee fighter. As you can see, she's distracting the enemy here, while the Sisters of Avalorn absolutely tear the rest of them apart. So based on that, I'm going to be giving Alarielle and Avalorn an overall ranking of 5 out of 5, putting them in the OP tier. And there you have it, folks. So in 6th place it is Teclis and the Order of Loremasters. In 5th place it is Imric and the Knights of CALEDOR. In joint 3rd is Altharian's YVRESSE and Tyrion's EATAINE. In 2nd place is Elithanar's NAGARYTHE. And in 1st place, of course, it's not going to be anyone else, it's obviously Alarielle's Avalorn. Now, I know this video has been long enough already, so I don't want to babble on further. I appreciate very much the time you guys have taken to watch this video. If you liked it, leave a comment or subscribe. If you didn't like it, please feel free to leave a comment and let me know why I didn't like it, and I'll try to improve my videos in the future. Again, I appreciate all of you guys for joining. Thank you very much. Asmid out.